Hello, welcome back at my next video on YouTube channel or any other platform, and this time I would like to focus on literature and literary classes and genres, because this is quite a complicated topic and many times I get the questions that a lot of people don't understand it even in their own languages, their own native mother tongues and languages. So sometimes it's maybe better to explain it also in English, how they recognize it, how they understand it. So I'm going through my lexicon, and we go through all the actually terms and expressions which might be connected with literature and these classes and genres and how it is divided. It is divided a little bit differently in every other language. For instance, the literary genres in English are drama, fable, fairy tale, fantasy, fiction, fiction in verse, folklore, historical fiction, horror, humor, legend, mystery, mythology, poetry, realistic fiction, science fiction, short story, tall tale. Non-fiction is biography, autobiography, essay, narrative, non-fiction, and speech. So these are actually English terms, but basically very similar are in other languages. This time I would like to focus on literature in a way of describing these terms and expressions from the beginning. So the first is lyric poetry. What does it mean, lyric poetry? It means poetry in verses. So this kind of how it works, what is poetry? It's describing, it's a form of literature, and it's referred to poetry, and you can describe it as beautiful as poetry. So this lyric means that it's a simple and direct style, and usually expresses personal emotions such as love. So lyric poetry is about love, emotions, songs, and these type of things. And this lyricism means that actually something is connected with gentle and romantic emotions, often expressed in writing, poetry, or music. So it doesn't mean only poetry. It means also articles, expressions, and other novels or short stories or music. Then epic poetry. Epic means, what does it mean, epic? Epic means that it's a sort of long book or poem or film whose story extends over a long period of time or tells of a great event. So it's usually connected through the history, and it's connected with the different events and historical actions. It might be also actually adjective. So epic means something very large, something very impressive, also adjective. So, but epic means in this way this kind of long story, long book, poem, or film. Drama and tragedy. Drama is basically serious play for theater, television, or radio. Drama doesn't mean only drama in theater. It means also for television or radio. It might be also just audio, audio drama. In general, it's play which is connected with theater, such as acting or producing. And drama, it usually describes the situations which are actually real, exciting or distressing or thrilling, so dramatic, so something dramatic. So usually it has a plot and some drama inside. Tragedy is actually another form of a drama, but it's extremely sad event or situation, and it means in literature especially, it's a kind of drama, and it is serious and very sad, and often ends with the death of the main character or main characters, even in plural. So that's sort of tragedy. It comes from the title, from the name, so we know that it's the end is tragic. Then myth and tall tale. Myth. What is myth? Myth is basically a well-known story which was made up by the people in the past to explain natural events or to justify religious beliefs or social customs. So myth is something which was just we usually describe it this way, something which is not basically true, but people believe it so much that it stayed in the minds of the people, and it's a description and belief, an explanation that this is a myth, but we know that it's not true, but a lot of people just believe it. We can say a lot of myths around many events, Greek myths and Roman Empire myths, and so on and so on. Then there is a tall tale, and tall tale is, we can say tall tale means something which is a long and complicated story that is difficult to believe because most of the events it describes seem unlikely or impossible. So it is something which it's unlikely to believe. It's too much, too over-exaggerated story. So it's too complicated to believe that it's true. Yeah. And then we can say that something is far-fetched, and that's kind of story which is not really real and we don't believe it. So far-fetched, that's a kind of story. Then a novel and romance. Novel is basically a long book or a long story or a long written story about imaginary people and events. So when somebody is writing novels, he's a novelist, and that's a kind of long story, long book. And from that romance is usually also romance, we can say it's usually longer story, but it refers to love affair or something about love, about romantic events, yeah? So love affairs usually, and adventures in love, yes. The next one is short story or just story sometimes, and that means that it's also a book or something which we can explain as a description of imaginary events and people, but it is shorter, yeah? So it's somehow like shrinked a little bit. It's a piece of news, piece of story. Yeah, it's just shorter one, yeah? But it's also story with a plot. We can say also tale. Be careful of fairy tale, tale. Tale can mean also just story. But it's usually often involving magic or exciting events, so it's not really true. So something like story as well. The next one is image or metaphor. Image or metaphor, what does it mean? We use it as a sort of symbolic term and expression to describe something, how we actually write the stories. So metaphor is an imaginative way of describing something by referring to something else which is the same in a particular way. For example, if you want to say that someone is very shy and frightened of the things, you might say that they are a mouse. So it's a symbol. It's just a symbolic for someone. Yeah. So the writers use usually metaphors. The people who are novelists. Yeah. So in poems. Yeah. So that's a metaphor. Be careful and don't mix it with personification, because sometimes a lot of people just don't know to distinguish and describe tell the difference between these two. It's hard. It's hard even for experts or for the teachers of literature. Personification means a particular thing or quality you personify with this kind of person. You mean that they are a perfect example of that thing or that. They have a lot of that quality. For instance, he was usually the personification of kindness. So we all knew him, and he was so well known that he's just kind. So he's a personification of kindness. You can always refer also to abstract things of representation in the form of a person. So for instance, somebody is like justice, somebody is like prudence, somebody is like truth, somebody is like a sun. So this is a personification. Then simile, and simile is strange because it's basically comparison, but in literature, the name is simile, or simile. And it's an expression which describes a person or a thing as being similar to someone or something else. For example, the sentence is, she runs like a deer, and he's as white as a sheet, contain similes. So similes are basically just, we say that someone is so strong, like a giant. Someone runs like a deer. Someone runs like a wolf. So when we actually compare it with something else, it's sometimes very difficult to actually mix that and not really distinguish between metaphor and simile. So be careful. Then there is a poetic question. Poetic question, what does that mean, poetic question? Poetic question we use also in normal articles and normal speeches and normal texts, and we usually don't expect the answer. When someone asks you something, asks poetically, it means that we just don't expect the answer. We just say, shall we do it or shall we not do it? Shall I be or shall I not be? These kind of poetic questions. Then there is epithet. Epithet is also it's an adjective or a short phrase which is used as a way of criticizing or praising someone. It's very formal. So epithet is, for instance, the religious issues which led to the epitaph, Bible basher. So epitaph is, it's usually, sometimes it can be connected with the poetry because it's in the verses, but not always. And epithet is basically used, might be in poetry, but not always. It's not actually connected only with poetry. Yeah. The next one is strophe or stanza. Strophe. How would we explain it? It's it's one part of the poem basically, and the other name is stance or stanza in Latin. And how would we explain this? Stanza is actually one part, and one part how the poem is divided. So usually poem has more of these stanza or the stances or strophes, and it is divided. It's technically divided. How it's usually 4 lines or 5 lines or 6 lines. It really depends. So this is the strophe, yeah. A rhyme, and we have actually rhyme, and rhyme is a typical, symbol of poetry or in poem. So when the poem is sometimes very modern, it doesn't have a lot of rhymes, but usually there is some kind of rhyme, and we have more types of rhymes. So rhyme is actually 2 words or more words. They have a very similar sound usually at the end, and words that rhyme with each other are often used in poems. So this is actually just this kind of symbol of poems. If a poem or song rhymes, the lines end with words that have very similar sounds. In English, it's very easy, and you can find it also in lyrics of the modern music lyrics, and modern music songs and pop songs and rock songs. For instance, because they have a lot of times the sound is similar. So, for instance, put, shoot, shut, dub, cup. Yes, so these kind of things at the end. This is the rhyme when it actually has the same sound. Then a verse, and verse is actually also poetry, but it's also writing arranged in lines which have rhythm and which often rhyme at the end. So verse is this one line which ends with a rhyme. So you have actually strophe or stanza or stance. Then you have this kind of one line, which is the verse, and then you have at the end the rhyme, which should actually have a similar sound or the same sound at the end to have that feeling of similarity. I think I explained a lot about poetry. The problem of literature and generally of this is that in each language is a little bit different. I heard from one of my colleagues or friends that Italian language is beautiful in poetry. Italian, maybe French. A lot of languages have a beautiful poetry, and of course the rhymes and verses and these kind of strophes are very different. It really depends on the language, but I think typical language is also Latin, and Italian comes from Latin, so that's why a lot of people say that Italian is also a perfect language for opera and for the rhymes and verses, and it's beautiful because of this language is very, very I would say rhythmic and like singic type of language. So that's why Italian can be very nice for poetry. Next time we are going to talk about the grammar. And I think about, it's hard to understand it, but I think I was quite maybe not so clear, but I think that somehow you can get what I wanted to say from this. Because it's hard, literary clauses, classes, genres, whatever. Grammar could be even more. But I think that next time I'm going to actually focus on the grammar and grammar terms and expressions. Thank you very much. See you next time.